Let's move on to something we haven't done in a while, Jim. Guess the program. I'm going to hit you with some classic wrestling programs, and you have to figure out when they're from and where they're from.
That's right. That's the rules of this. We already know why you're doing this, because the questions suck.
Doing this because it's something that we will have fun with, something the listeners will enjoy, and something that hopefully will put you in a good mood. Let's go to this first one. I'm opening it here.
Corned beef doesn't do the job. Not unless it's from, what's that? The deli in New York now. They closed it.
Well, you used to like the Carnegie
I like
deli.
to go to the Carnegie. If it's corned beef from the Carnegie, that'll put me in a good mood.
All right, tell me when and where this card is from, Jim.
Okay, I'm concentrating now. I'm even going to take notes.
Preliminary matches. Don Fields versus Gene Corsica.
Corsica Gene.
I know, but it says here Gene Corsica, so I'm reading it the way it has it here.
Okay.
Millie Stafford versus China Mira. A 10-minute intermission where lucky numbers will be announced. And then we have two main events. Farmer Jones versus Anton Leone, 2 out of 3 falls. And also 2 out of 3 falls, a mixed tag team match. China Mira, Chris Tolis, and Don Fields versus Millie Stafford and the Corsica brothers.
Okay. One would suspectify that because the Fields brothers were involved, it would be in Alabama. One would suspect that. And the Corsica brothers, it could be Tennessee or Alabama, or potentially Chris Tolis is a wild card there, but I seem to remember that Chris Tolis would have worked down south in the late 50s, early 60s. Anton Leone was all over the place at various points. Of course, he was famous for setting up an independent or outlaw promotion in California in the 80s, but this is no more recent than 1965. I've still, unless it was Louisiana, close to Alabama, or in one of the periods of time where one of the Fuller family or Welch family was in charge of the booking of Louisiana, I'm still going to put this in Alabama, and I'm going to say the period of time was between 1959 and 1963.
The date? Monday night, September 2nd, 1957.
Shit!
Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis! Son of a bitch!
And an interesting note here on this program, on the back page, page 4, TV wrestling starts September 7. Television wrestling returns to Memphis on Saturday night, September 7 on Channel 13. Promoters Mickey Barnes, Nick Goulas, and Roy Welch have planned matches each week for the enjoyment of you fans. There is no charge for admission. However, a limited number of seats make it necessary for you to secure your tickets in advance. All you have to do is send a self-addressed stamped envelope to promoter Mickey Barnes in care of the Chisca? The Chisca Hotel?
Spell it.
Chisca.
Son of a bitch, I get it. They didn't last there long.
The Chisca Hotel, Memphis. You will receive your tickets by return mail with a date stamped as to what night they will be honored, but you will get your tickets. With this new live TV wrestling card, it enables fans to see wrestling 2 times a week, once for free. So send your orders in now, no cost to you, no obligation, and the TV card for Saturday, September 7th, Millie Stafford versus Kathy Branch, and Les Welch versus Pat Malone.
Wow.
In parentheses, Black Bat.
Because he worked in Memphis instead of the Green Shadow at one time, he was the Black Bat.
Yeah.
But by the way, Kathy Branch married Tom Renesto and was the
Tom Branch.
brother of Tom Branch, Tom Renesto Jr., and Speedy Talltree was his brother. Well, now I'm embarrassed. Now we know the exact date of the restart of Memphis television in 1957, and Roy had just picked the town up. Mickey Barnes was the local promoter. They'd used him in Kingsport and in other places. And the Corsica brothers make sense, and I just didn't identify that as a Memphis card because that was, at the spot show card. That's why Les Wolf's promotion wasn't doing well in the 50s. It was, a tag team match and fucking a girls match out of that and a couple of singles. But I'm embarrassed. Okay, I've lost that one.
For our next program, let me open this up to get the card.
Standing by.
Special event, Paul Jones versus Dick Daviscourt.
Ooh.
Also in a jiu-jitsu match, Jack Roller versus Kazuo Yashimi. And the main event, 2 out of 3 falls, Joe Malkowitz versus Ed Strangler Lewis.
Jesus Christ. We're in the late 30s, early 40s.
Hold on, because this is a long time ago. Let me see if there's any clue I can give you from this that wouldn't give anything away. Fire notice.
Fire, we just invented it?
All right, I'm gonna give you one clue. Joe Stecker, former World's Wrestling Champion who retired voluntarily from the mat game following his defeat at the hands of champion Ed Strangler Lewis in St. Louis, February 20th, is ready to start a comeback that may regain him the title.
But without giving a city, what's the name of the arena this is being held in?
That's going to give it all away, but I'll do it anyway.
Well, you don't have to say the New York Madison Square Garden. I guess that's
okay.
a good example.
I'm not going to say it's the Los Angeles Olympic Auditorium, but it's a building known as the Olympic Auditorium.
Bastard. Well, I just said, all right, you didn't have to be a smart aleck.
I could have said the Olympic now that I think about it.
I'm still working on I can't remember the year of Lewis and Stecker, but we're in the late 30s, right?
No. We're in the
into
late
the
20s.
40s?
We're in the
late 20s. Okay. In that case, I'm going to say 28.
Very good. December 19th, 1928, Lou Darrow, the promoter, Olympic Auditorium.
Carnation Lou Darrow. At first, when you mentioned Paul Jones, obviously that's not the Paul Jones from Crockett. That's the Paul Jones that was the Atlanta promoter and owned pretty much of the office for all those years. Obviously, Joe Malkowitz went on to become the promoter in San Francisco years later, but Los Angeles, 1928. I would have thought we were in the 30s, but I didn't know Dick Daviscourt was that old. I didn't know jiu-jitsu was that old.
Let's go to our next program here, Jim. Let me open this one up. An interesting card. Let's see if you get this. Tommy Gilbert and Eddie Marlin versus Terry Garvin and Jim Garvin. Ron Garvin versus Jerry Jarrett. Don Green and Bearcat Brown versus the Fabulous Kangaroos with Sir Clements. This is, let me read this. A return explosive tag battle. Falls count on the floor, in the aisle, in the ring, and anywhere in the building. No time limit, no disqualification. And the main event?
That's a Nick Gula stipulation all over the place.
The Interns, with manager Dr. Ken Ramey, versus Randy Curtis and Lorenzo Parenti. No DQ. One of the interns will wear a different colored jersey.
That's because they used to switch, because they were all in white and they were indistinguishable. So they would switch, to prevent them from, they did it with the Von Brauners also. They would make one member of the team wear a different color.
And
it's not.
And three Garvins, including Ron Garvin versus Jerry Jarrett.
Yes, all three of the Garvin. This is 1973. I can tell. Am I right about that?
November 6, 1973.
Okay. And I mean, are you throwing me another Memphis? Because that could have been a Memphis card, or it could be Nashville, Birmingham.
Ding, 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 Birmingham.
Okay, there you go, Birmingham, Alabama.
I thought Jerry Jarrett would have been the thing that could have thrown you off and made you think it was Memphis.
Well, no, just because in 1973 he was working the full territory because he was one of the top baby faces.
I didn't realize he was going to the Alabama towns.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, he couldn't be in two places the same night. They were running more than one town a night, but no, he was working everywhere. He was one of the top baby faces. And especially if that's a night that they weren't running Memphis on the same night, if Memphis was switched or whatever. But also, the Kangaroos were a top heel team in the territory at that time. Don Green and Bearcat Brown were huge baby faces. Tommy Gilbert and Eddie Marlin were the rock and roll express of the time, in that they were the team. Even though Eddie was in his 40s, Tommy was 10 or 12 years younger and looked kind of like Burt Reynolds with the mustache and the cowboy hat and everything. So they had the girls loving them. The Garvins were a heck of a heel team, but Jimmy was the manager at this point of Ron and Terry Garvin. And they would make Jimmy wrestle every once in a while because he had just turned, I think, 18 or 19 the year before and gone on the road with him. And he wasn't a full-fledged wrestler yet. And the big thing is the interns were one of the top heel teams that ever appeared in the Tennessee territory. But Randy Curtis and Lorenzo Parenti were a team that they just tried to push out of nowhere. They did the same thing in Louisville for about a month, putting them in main events. And then for whatever reason, it was over with. And you never saw Randy Curtis again. Lorenzo Parenti was around for a while because he had been around for ages. But I knew that had to be the Tennessee territory. It was just a question of what town it was in.
All right, here's our next one. The referees are Otto Kuss and Ray Gunkel. Cyclone Anaya versus Jack O'Reilly. Steve Stanley versus Jim LaRock. Ramon Torres versus Tony Martin. Gentleman Ed Francis, and I believe this would be after, I shouldn't give anything away, but I already did it. This would be after he was the World Junior Heavyweight Champion, I believe, versus Gene Kelly. Duke Kiamuka versus Danny Bulldog Pletchus. And the main event, Buddy Rogers versus Iron Mike.
Ooh, okay. Is that DiBiase?
It is DiBiase, although for the record in the program, the name DiBiase is never listed once, just Iron Mike.
Boy, you got a potpourri there. Ed Francis would be most known for the promotion in Hawaii, but he was a wrestler before that. Gene Kelly was noted for Singing in the Rain. Duke Kiamoka would have been huge in Florida, but I was about to say, you've just said the referees were Otto Kuss and who?
Ray Gunkel.
And Ray Gunkel. Otto Kuss would have been a referee in Texas. Ray Gunkel would later at least become the all-time top babyface of the 60s in Atlanta. You've got Buddy Rogers, who everywhere. Mike DiBiase would have been facing Buddy Rogers primarily in the Southwest, one would think. But there is Jim LaRock, who was a top babyface in the Evansville, Indiana area in 1959, 1960. Jesus Christ. This has got to be between, one would think, 1959 and 1962. And I'm going to say it's in Texas. I don't know why, except for Otto Kuss never went anywhere else, did he? I don't know why Ray Gunkel would be refereeing there.
It is from the Dallas Sportatorium.
Okay.
July 3rd, 1956.
I wouldn't have said that early. A little bit earlier than I would have said.
Well, one of the giveaways.
Steamrollered me.
One of the giveaways you didn't pick up on, Gene Kelly, was Gene Kiniski.
Ah, shit, that's right.
And here's something interesting here.
That's right.
New air cooling in tonight, which I thought would be interesting considering you were there and 20 years later, 30 years later, and there was no air conditioning.
Not a bit of it. Now, the air cooling in the locker room was a fucking big fan. So I've never, maybe they left the door to the refrigerator at the concession stand open.
All right, two more.
Give me some more. Give me something.
This one here is an interesting program. Return grudge battle, Mike Paducas versus Doug Lindsay.
Ooh.
Sandor Kovac and Steve Kovac versus Mephisto and Dante. And the main event, a 5-girl wrestle royal, Miss Cora Combs, Miss Dorothy Carter, Miss Ann Casey, Miss Kay Noble, and Miss Barbara Galento. There will also be 2 other girl matches as paired off from the Wrestle Royal.
That is going to be Mike Paducas played football for the University of Tennessee and wrestled in from the 50s through maybe the early 70s. Doug Lindsay was later known as Doug Gilbert. For the 70s WWF fans, Gas House Gilbert. He was also Doug Gilbert, the masked professional. Mephisto and Dante could have been anybody. It could be, if this was 1972, it could be Dennis Condrey is one of them. But there was a number. Steve Kovac was also Stephen Little Bear. Steve Kovac was big on top for Nick Goulas in the 60s and 70s. Sandor Kovac. Could that be the Sandor Kovac?
I'm not certain, and I want to say.
I bet not, because with the 5-girl wrestle royal and Barbara Galento being involved, as well as Cora Combs, that tells me this is a Nick Goulas and Roy Welch production. And I'm going to say it's from a small town either in East Tennessee or potentially Western Virginia. And I'm going to say that it was somewhere between 1962 and 1966.
Pretty good. It's Birmingham again, although not
Birmingham
a small town.
again. Son of a gun.
But January 17th, 1962.
Okay. I'm not as good on my Birmingham as I should be. But that seems like a small card for Birmingham.
It happened last week. Jumping Joe Dillman and Bob Holland handled the duties as referee in last Monday night's Wild and Woolly Pro Wrestling at the City Auditorium.
See, if you'd have told me Bob Holland was one of the referees, I'd have got it.
Lively action saw Jackie Fargo beat Johnny Apollo. Doug Lindsay came out over Big Don Rocky Lee. Canadian brothers Sandor and Steve Kovac won over Johnny Costas and Pedro Zapata. And Mike Paducas down Big Tiny Smith.
You know who Big Tiny Smith is, don't you?
Is that Grizzly Smith?
That's Grizzly.
He was working for Roy and Nick?
He worked in the early 60s, a 7-foot tall guy worked for everybody.
Where'd they go? Fans ask many times where their favorites have gone. Here are the latest on a few. Tommy O'Toole's in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, as is Reggie Parks. Mr. Moto's in Los Angeles, California. Howard Martin is in Cleveland, Ohio. Larry Shane is in Detroit, Michigan. And finally, Dick Beyer is in Buffalo, New York. And we have one last program here, Jim. Now, there's no way you would ever get this one, so we're just going to talk about the program.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to give you the card. Let's see if
Just let's see what happens. See how close I can get.
All right, I was going to talk about the program, and we'll see.
We'll still talk about it, your big program there.
All right, here's the, here's all that's listed. The main event, 6-man tag match, 2 out of 3 falls, 60-minute time limit. Von Bronner, Patty Mack, and Chico Cortez versus Nature Boy, Carl Linich, and Billy Sharpert.
What is this? Now, is this a Jack Pfeffer deal? And I have no idea. Those are not normal people. So you were right. I have no idea what's going on. Those are not normal people.
This is Volume 2, Number 35, November 7th, 1956, the Bowling Green Wrestling Journal. Devoted exclusively to wrestling, the only year-round sport.
Bowling Green, Kentucky?
Bowling Green, Kentucky. This program is for the first Kentucky 1-cent sale. 6-man tag went... That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. 1956, they're calling it a 6-man tag in the program.
What else would they call it?
Well, no, because people are now arguing that it was called Trios before it was called 6-man tag match.
No, it wasn't. Just in Mexico.
Just in Mexico. But here it is here in 1956 in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And the promoter, hold on, that is certainly not any Nature Boy I've ever seen.
Well, it's not Nick and Roy. It's an outlaw group. Because Bowling Green is only 60 miles from Nashville. So Bowling Green was a town that Nick ran every week for 25 or 30 years, probably.
Promoter and matchmaker Joe Marshall. S. Rush Nicholson, State Athletic Commission. Kenneth Marshall's the publisher of this program here, and they're operating out of the Helm Hotel and I guess just the Helm Hotel.
And that used to be a deal that wrestling offices would be in hotels. Anything from the Holland Hotel in New York being where Skolin and Gorilla and all of those guys would, play cards and give out the free tickets and the press passes, to Nick and Roy made a career of having their offices in different hotels, the Sam Davis Hotel or in Nashville or wherever the case, because in those days you could rent rooms in those old downtown hotels on a monthly basis and set up an office, and the wrestling fans didn't have anybody's personal address, so they couldn't track you down. I don't know who all those people were, though.
What year did the Von Brauners start?
Start wrestling?
Yeah.
I don't know what year each one of them individually started as a rookie before they became the Von Brauners.
Because when I see a guy listed here as Von Brauner and it's spelled Brawner, and now I see his full name here, Johann Von Brauner.
Well, but you know what? The Kurt and Carl Von Brauner, which one of them was named Jimmy Brauner, and it was spelled that way, Brawner. That may have been him as a rookie, because the team of the Von Brauners, I think, got together, 59-ish, 60-ish? And with Gentleman Saul, and they were together for about 10 or 12 years in Florida, California, Tennessee, etc., all over the place.
You see that? Fun with Guest the Program. And there it is, another edition. We'll do this again soon. Good time?
Well, yeah, it's just you keep throwing me swerves and curves there. When you go back to Birmingham twice, you're double dipping in Birmingham. See, that threw me off. That wasn't fair. I call foul.
All right, well, we'll see if we're fair next time, but if you're calling foul long enough, and if you're calling
foul funk,
if you're calling foul loud enough, I may get a little upset. I don't think there was any foul in any way, and I think there's evidence here on this audio recording. I may sue.
I've got a gripe. I may sue. I say that you fouled me, and that you did not go by the rules according to Hoyle, as they say, and now I may have to file a suit, and I know exactly who, if I want to sue you, you suit-wearing son of a gun, this is the guy that I'll call.
Call Stephen P. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Those are the rest.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you know who it is. Stephen P. New. You know how to call him. 888-692-8084. You know how to write him or get a hold of him on the internet, newlawoffice.com. And you know all about him because we've talked about him For years and years, we've talked about all the settlements. Just last week on the program, how many tens and hundreds of millions of dollars did we say that he has gotten in settlements in various cases over the past 20-something years for people not only in his home state of West Virginia, but all across the country? We mentioned that. We mentioned the types of suits, anything from the babies born addicted to opioids to the poisoned groundwater to the various ways that big government and big companies and big corporations and greedy, avaricious people infringe and impinge on the little guy. And we talked about how much he does for the people, that he's one of the number one rated philatelists in all of West Virginia. He gives money to he's a philatelist. He gives money to the needy, to the sick. That's what I said, a philatelist. He practices philately. He's one of the most proficient philatelists in all of West Virginia.
It sounds filthy. I don't know what you're saying. It sounds.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Philanthropy is when you give money. Philatelist, you know what a philatelist is, don't you, that practices philately?
No, I don't know.
A stamp collector.
Ah.
And that's what Stephen does in his spare time after he helps people. He goes home and he takes a pair of those tweezers and he holds up a 1916 upside-down loogie stamp from the Isle of Latvia, and he puts it in his album, and he says, there, I've just made another $1 million.
The Isle of Latvia?
The Isle of Latvia.
Interesting.
But, folks, you can have West Virginia's premier philatelist on your side and in your corner, even though he gives money to children's sports teams and he gives money to various charities to feed homeless people. He's always wanting to help somebody, and he can help you out. So if you need to go to court, or if you're being taken to court, or if you want to take somebody to court, or just anything to do with court, then you call Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084, newlawoffice.com. Get even with Stephen. He's a philatelist.
He's a philanthropist and a wonderful man, and I don't know anything about a stamp collection, but call him today if you need his help, Stephen P. New.
And he's got comic books, too.